Hello, thanks again for downloading one of our safety statement templates. You may have looked at some of our videos already as regards downloads and customizing the statement itself. So what we're going to have a look at here in this video is just how to do the risk assessments in a little more detail. Now, let's just exit out of this screen and we'll go to where we've saved it. You may remember, again from before, we saved it on our desktop. In this case, we're going to use electricians as a sample, and we're calling them high voltage electricians. Obviously, you could be a restaurant, you could be a transport company, a taxi driver. It doesn't really matter what it is. The process will be the same for them all. So let's have a look at this one. If we open it up, and you'll have yours saved in wherever you have. As you may notice from this one here, we've already got it all set up for the high voltage electricians, and all the different bits and pieces are in there. John Hightower is the owner, and then his deputy is Mr. Peter Sparks, as you can see down here, and we've just put in a date for June 2014. The common things are all here: first aid, safety consultation, accident reporting, smoking, and so on. The piece we're interested in is this one here, Part 4, Hazard Identification and Control Measures. This is where all the risk assessments are. Now, this is the section that is particularly specific to the different occupations. So things like warehousing will have forklifts in here and tail lifts and duct levelers and so on. General practitioner and doctor is going to have things like needle stick injuries and biocontamination. Whereas here with the electrician, we have things like electricity itself, hazardous substances, assembly and technical work, abrasive wheels, which would be angle grinders, working at height on scaffolds, mobile elevation working platforms, working with general electricity, working with high voltage. So they're all specific to the electrical work. So what we'll do is we'll jump straight down into part 4 and we'll have a look at part 4.1. Oh, went a little bit too far, just back up. Okay. Everybody will have this section here in their safety statement templates, and this is the area where you decide on what the value is going to be for the risk assessment. What you need to remember is this one here is really important. A hazard is something that can cause an injury. So a hazard would be a blade, electricity, a pool of water on the floor, a reversing vehicle. They're all hazards because they can cause an injury. And then the risk is the likelihood of the injury happening based on that hazard being present. So how likely would it be that I would be hit by the reversing truck or by the electrical component, whatever it might be. Here we're looking very simply at one of fire, and we can see in a very simple way, we'll just look here at the risk assessment score. And what we'll say is here for our risk assessment for our electricians, we're saying the fire and emergency plan for the client site, so in other words, the site I'm going to be working on, will be followed by the high voltage electrician employees. However, in general, the fire safety arrangements for high voltage electricians are set out below. So in this case, what he's saying is, as most of the work for the electrician is carried out on other people's premises, they will abide by the rules for that site, which is fine. So what we're saying here then is for a risk assessment, well then what's the likelihood of the fire actually happening and me being hurt? So given that it's on someone at the site and they're nice and safe and everything is organized, we'll say the likelihood is 1. 6 would be very, very likely to happen, and 1 is very unlikely to happen. The severity though, a score of 1 means something like bumps, bruises and paper cuts, whereas a score of 6 here would be a fatality. Now, a fire could result in a fatality, so we're going to give it a score of 6. So we multiply now 1 multiplied by 6 gives us then a risk value of 6. So now we say that the risk is 6, but the highest possible score here would be 36. So in this case, it's still a low risk activity. We then look at all the different controls here that we should follow. Now let's go on a little bit further to something that would be a bit more relevant. This one here now we'll say access and egress. So we're saying access and egress is getting in and getting out, doorways, corridors, and so on. And most safety statements will have an element of access and egress in it. So we're saying here, high voltage electrician staff will adhere to all rules regarding access and egress on the client site. That's fine. And set out below are then general arrangements for the company. So the risk assessment, so what's the likelihood of something being a problem with access and egress? So what's the likelihood of there being a box or a piece of cable or something in the floor? Now, 6 means there's definitely going to be something there. 1 means there's never going to be anything there. But we're probably looking at something in between the two. So the chances of there being something there is possible. So let's give it a score of 3. And the severity then, well, if I was to slip and fall on a piece of cable, I could sprain an ankle, I could break a wrist, I might fall face first and break a nose. So let's give it a score of 4, which might be for fractures and things. And then we multiply them, we get 3 multiplied by 4, gives us a risk value of 12. And that is as simple as it is. Now, we look then, we've decided then 12 is the risk value. So what's our control measures? Well, we're going to say all door and access points kept clear and maintained. All passageways shall be kept clear of obstruction. All floor covering and surfaces kept clean and good condition. Adequate lighting be provided at entry and so on. So these are all the rules to make sure that nobody slips and falls in that area. And we've said what the value of the score is. Now, these are the kind of things you just check over on your own safety statement template. Everybody will have some elements of access and egress. If we go on a little bit further, let's go for something a bit more specific. Power tools. Okay, power tools will definitely be used by an electrician. So we're saying here now, what's the likelihood of me using the power tool? Definitely going to be using a power tool, but not all day long. Some days I'll use my hands, some times of the day, sometimes I'll use screwdrivers. I won't always use a power tool. So maybe the score here then is 6 means I'm definitely going to be using it a lot of the time, 1 means I'm never going to use it. So let's go for 4. And then severity, well, how bad would it be if things went wrong with a power tool? Well, let's say the extreme is something like the bit on a drill breaks and a piece of the bit was to go into my eye and I was to lose an eye. So that's going to be a score of 5, which is a very serious injury. We multiply them, 4 multiplied by 5 gives us a score of 20. Right. So we can see this is more serious than the accidents and the slipping and the falling and the access and egress, but maybe not so serious as some other things in here like high voltage electricity. So what should we do then? The control measures. We must check then, is the outside of the plug undamaged? Is there any sign of overheating? Is the cable free from kinking? So these are all the typical controls that we should have there when we're dealing with power tools. And you continue on through the rest of the safety statement template and the rest of the risk assessment, giving each one a score. The important thing to remember about these scores is that whether you're doing it with drills or whether you're looking at something with, if we go on a bit further, working at height ladders and material mobile elevation working platforms and so on, the important thing to be aware of is that you give an honest score for your business. Some electricians will use power tools a lot. Some will use them very frequently. Some electricians may never go up on a mobile elevation working platform or a cherry picker, and some may use them a lot. So everybody is going to be different. So the important thing with the score is, when it comes to doing risk assessments, give yourself an honest score, what you believe is correct for the company. Check over the different control measures that are in there. Feel free to add to them. If we go down here and we look at something like, just go for something very simple. Scrolling down here, manual handling, which really is a training issue for most people. But let's say something simple like housekeeping, which would be very common. This again will be for slips and falls, but we see here the control measures, what they are, but we may decide, well, for our site, we want to do something else. So we'll add in a piece here saying that all visitors to the premises must take care. Now, that's a very bland statement, obviously, but it just shows you can add to this as much as you want. You can also take away from it. But say, to be really black and white about it, managers will ensure that stacking areas are prepared. Well, if we don't stack anything anywhere, maybe we can take that out because we don't do any kind of stacking at all. And that's it, plain and simple. So, going back up to the contents page, if we jump right back up here, we can see here that for the electrician, there is 22 suggested risk assessments in here covering various different kinds of activities. Some safety statement templates will have a lot more, some will have less. It depends entirely on the kind of one that you downloaded, but the main thing to be aware of is that each one will be set up for the task and for the occupation that you've specified in your download, and then you need to give a score then onto each one of them as you go along and make the score as honest as you can. Afterwards, you should go back over the risk assessments and look for the things that score high. The things that score high numbers, that's where you should put your effort in and make sure you really make sure the employees are aware of those high scoring ones and they know what to do about them. That's pretty much it for the risk assessments. I'm going to leave it at that for now. If you have any other questions, obviously feel free, go back out to our website and feel free to drop us a question anytime if you're not sure about anything. Okay, thank you very much for that.